Thursday night. Is Proverbs chapter 25, and we're in verse 11. And verse 11 and verse 12 and verse 13 and verse 14 and verse 15 all have to do with words. This verse, our first verse, is talking about appropriate words. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in pitchers of silver. It's most wonderful art of all the arts is to be able to speak and to speak properly and appropriately whenever you're asked or confronted to speak. Over the years of my ministry, I have conducted hundreds of funerals. Funerals are always sad. They are always a time of bereavement for the family. I have been around the dead and the living and the survivors all these years, and I almost cringe when I hear somebody come up to somebody that has just lost their loved one and say, well, Romans 8:28's in the book. Romans 8:28 is the most wonderful verse in the Bible, but it really isn't appropriate. You know, all things work together for his good. It's good that your husband died. It's good that your child, no, we know what the verse means. And we know that it is best for them that person has died. That's true. But that's not what that person wants to hear. It may be good for that person that's died. They've gone to heaven. But the rest of those people are left behind to suffer the loss of their loved one. And if you could ever learn how to speak or just keep your mouth closed, it would be a very wonderful art. And let me just say while I'm on this subject of funerals, because we all have a part in burying the dead. It's best that you don't say anything. Just be there so the family knows that you care. Love them. Tell them you're sorry. Tell them you love them. And you share their grief and their sorrow. Don't try to be some gallant preacher and give them words of comfort that will not comfort them at all. Kind of leave that up to the pastor when he gets to give the eulogy and the message at the funeral service. But be careful. I know some people are so super spiritual that they feel like they've got to say all of these words. But offer your condolence. That's the right thing to do. And to send some flowers. I know people are, you hear screwballs, and I use that screwballs an awful lot. My wife said I use it too much, but it describes what I want to say. I hear screwballs say, well, don't put any flowers on my grave. I don't want any flowers at my funeral. Now I just say to you, don't be an idiot. Don't cut people off from expressing themselves. Flowers say a lot. They mean, I care. And it comforts. It is a comfort. Now I know there are people who their beanies mixed up. They somehow or other, it's like that chicken said to the scrambled egg, "You crazy mixed up kid." And that's about the way it is with some folks. But we're talking about words fitly spoken. They're beautiful. They're like apples of gold in pitchers, bowls, baskets of silver. Would you take sort of a life challenge to develop in your own vocabulary thoughtful words, beautiful words, timely words, heartfelt words, meaningful words, sincere words, words that fit the occasion. And as I said at a funeral, comforting words. I worry about some people who never develop their Christian life hardly at all. And they talk just like they talked when they were 10, 15 years old, and they're still talking that way when they're 50, 60, 70. Their life, their talk has never changed. I told you about it, but I went to my high school class 50 year anniversary. And the kids that were kids when I was growing up that were talked ugly, they're still talking ugly. And they're my age. In fact, all those people at that homecoming were all old folks. And it's a strange thing, they got so old. But one of the finest arts in all the world is to learn how to talk. And it's so important in the Lord's work. I'm trying to emphasize that. All of the words that come from our mouth are really important. Jesus said, Matthew 12, 36 and 37, "But I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give an account thereof in the day of judgment. For by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned." Solomon said in Proverbs 15 and 1, "A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger." I have been around thousands of people. There are people who seemingly are, I call them cocky. They're really conceited, smart-aleck people who say curt words. When I say curt, that means cutting words. And we're Christian people. I've heard Christians say, "Well, I really told him off. Well, I gave him a piece of my mind." Now, you haven't got too much mind if you talk like that. I wouldn't give anybody any of it. And I'm trying to say that you no doubt, when you told somebody off, you no doubt lost a friend. Somebody you'll never regain again. You've ruined all your relationships with that person. You lose your testimony. You hurt the cause of Christ. You might even send souls to hell by the way that you talk. I say if you want to be in the Lord's work, and that's what this class is all about, learn how to talk. Learn how to say, you know, I hear people say, well, I just say what comes to my mind, and I'm going to speak my mind. I'm just going to say what, you'd be far better off not doing that. And you want to be honest, I know that's what you want to be. But you don't have to, I said it before, but you don't have to tell the truth. You don't have to lie, neither, by no means. But you don't have to tell everything that you know, either. You don't have to say everything that you think. You might think you do, but that is because you are not matured. And our whole object of our class is a character building lessons by Solomon on how to handle our life. And one of the first things you do is learn to handle your mouth. Notice the next verse comes right along, talking about reproving words. As an earring of gold and an ornament of fine gold, so is a wise reprover upon an obedient ear. You're talking about earrings of gold and ornaments of gold. We're talking about something that is really valuable. Something that is of great value. And a wise reprover, somebody that can admonish somebody, that can call them down, teach them a lesson, rebuke them and reprove them, and not lose their friendship. That is some kind of a person who has taught themselves not to offend. Now, you're not going to go through life just with a bunion on your tongue and not saying what you feel like you need to say at times. But I'm saying, basically speaking, if you ever preach or teach or whatever you could do to further the cause of Christ and communicate with people, there are a lot of people who need help. And like I was telling Brother Gunning before class, I'm honest with you, I would get in my car after class tonight and I would travel 100 miles yet tonight to go to hear somebody preach or teach that could help me, straighten me out in some areas of my life. I'm not even cognizant that need to be straightened out, but there must be. I'm nowhere near sainthood yet. And so I say, though, it would take somebody to say the right thing at the right time, hit me broadside, say, absolutely, that is the truth. That's what I've been waiting to hear. That's what'll help me more than anything in my life. And if you could be a good rebuker, a good reprover, without hurting that person and wounding their spirit for the rest of their life, all of us need help. Every one of us that's here tonight. No one of us is perfect. And to straighten somebody out in some area that you're wrong, or they're wrong, is called a wise reprover in our verse. A wise reprover. Of course, it doesn't work too good. Even if you're a wise reprover, if the person doesn't have an obedient ear, that's what he said. Upon an obedient ear, you have to have ears to be able to focus and take this wise rebuke. Uh, if you knew the person that was rebuking you, and you knew that they knew what they were talking about, you'd listen to them. They know what they're talking about. I need to hear this, and I better listen to this, and I better apply it to my heart. And it does make me mad. My pastor made me mad. He did. I mean, I've told you about the incident before, but it was valuable to me. It absolutely changed my life. It kept me here in this church. I wasn't at this church like 2 years, probably a year and a half. And the church grew. It grew from, well, just a handful of people. We went all the way up to 450 in Sunday school. And it was on its way. I thought I was another Jack Hiles. And I kind of got a little cocky and smart aleck about it, you know, and I, like Nebuchadnezzar strolling through the hanging gardens and saying, "This is the kingdom that I have built," you know. When I went over to a tent meeting, a revival meeting at Flint, where my pastor was pastoring, and the preacher preached a good sermon, and there was a good crowd and a lot of folks there, and went forward and one thing and another. And the pastor said, "Why don't you come over to the house for a snack and a coffee or whatever?" And I said, "Well, okay." So I went over there, and I was a big shot preacher now. I was a big shot preacher. I knew a lot more than even my pastor knew. And when you know more than your pastor knows, I'd watch out if I were you. So when we got over there, I asked my pastor, I said, "How come you had this Methodist preacher come and hold a Baptist revival?" He squared off at me, and he told me that I was so narrow-minded I could look through a keyhole with both eyes open. He told me that I was, what he called me, another name for a donkey. That's what he called me. Kind of made me real mad. And the conversation pretty well got settled, and I said, I better get back to Lansing. I got in the car and my family and headed back to Lansing. And I was so mad I could have bit the head off of 10 penny nails. I was mad. But on the way home, God began to get a hold of it. I want to tell you this. Before I left the house, he said, "Don, if it'll make you feel better." He said, "Dr. Zoller," he thought I preached that night, was pastoring a Baptist church in Florida before he came up to hold this meeting. Why he didn't tell me that before he chewed me out, I don't know, but he knew, that he told me. He told me I was getting too big for my britches, too cocky and too smart aleck, and to rebuke my own pastor. He worked me over to the fare thee well. Well, on the way home, I could sense that he knew what he was talking about. And the more I would come home to Lansing, drove in the yard, we lived at the parsonage at that time, which was right on this property. And I got my pajamas on and went to bed. But I got to crying. I couldn't go to sleep. And I said, my pastor is right, and I'm wrong. We're gonna have a split in our church. And I'd caused it too. It was building up steam, and the undercurrent was getting bad, and I was about ready to lose the church. But it was nobody's fault but mine. So I got up and I got dressed, put my suit and tie on, and my wife, my first wife, she said, "Don, where are you going?" I said, "I'm going calling." She She said, "You go and call it. It's 1 o'clock in the morning." I said, "I know it is, and I probably catch them to home." And I made 14 house calls between 1 o'clock and 9:30 in the morning. Well, the first stop was a fella just down here on the corner. He was one of the trustees in the church. And I stopped and I knocked on the door, and he came to the door. And he had a nightgown. I didn't know men wore nightgowns. And he had a hat. He had a sleeping hat, you know, like they wear in this. You see in pictures. He wore one. So I said, he said, "Pastor, what are you doing here this hour of the night?" I said, "I just come by to ask you if you'd pray with me and for me." He said, "Well, sure, come on in." So I knelt down at the couch and prayed, and I said something like this: "Lord, I realize that there's trouble in the church, and I want you to know, Lord, that I'm taking full responsibility for it, and it's my fault, and I want you to forgive me, and I want this man here to forgive me." And so when he prayed, "Lord, it's not the pastor's fault, it's my fault." We almost got in a fight over whose fault it was. But that went on all night, 14 house calls. And it broke the back of all that undercurrent. The next night was Wednesday night. It was the biggest Wednesday night crowd I had ever preached to in my life. And the sweet Spirit of God had fallen upon the church. I went over, and somebody, as our text says, a wise reprover, reproved me. And I had obedient ears to hear it and did something about it. And God changed the whole pattern. And now I've been here 50 years with God's blessings and power and souls, and raised my family, and they're all living for God. What a mess I'd have been in. But I'm saying, dear sweet people, learn how to talk. My pastor knew I was in trouble, and he straightened me out. But I'm saying it's a valuable thing for somebody. It's like a parent with a child. You have to say things to rebuke your children, but you can say it in such a way that you drive them right out of the house. Or you can say it in such a way that they'll know that you love them and that you're trying to help them. Can you understand what I'm saying? It takes something just beside a lot of yelling and screaming at one another to get things done. It takes some brains, and it takes prayer, and it takes God, and God will show you how to do things if you'll listen to Him. I mean, it doesn't really take much when you're going down Kavanaugh Road about 40 miles an hour, and a policeman pulls up alongside of you and tells you to get off the side of the road. You do it without much trouble. And when you roll down the window, you're very kind. And he rebukes you. "What was I doing, officer?" "You were going 40 in a 30-mile-an-hour zone." "Well, could you have mercy on me?" He said, "Well, I'm going to do this for you because I think it'll help you. I'm going to give you a ticket. That ticket," he said, "might save your life, or it might save somebody else's life, because it helps people to be reminded that it isn't right to go 40 in a 30-mile zone." Can you understand that? Now, he was a wise rebuker. He didn't say, "You jerk, you screwball, nincompoop, can't you read?" He didn't say that. He just gave you a ticket. Well, I'm talking about policemen. I'm talking about pastors and school principals and people that could rebuke you, some good pal. chum friend of yours, say, now George, I want to tell you this. I don't mean to hurt you, and I'm not running your business, but I noticed this in your life, and if you don't do something about it, you're really going to get in trouble. You don't yell and scream and pitch a fit, but just learn how to talk. There's something about wise reprover in a wise manner and some discerning way, some knowledgeable way. Somebody that you know has got the right perception can help you. Now, most of you are got brains, or you wouldn't be in this class, and I mean that sincerely. You're interested. I don't know of any cocky, smart aleck people in this class. But you see me, you're looking at me as I talk. You see this old gray hair. You see a few wrinkles on my face. You hear my little scratchy old age voice talking to you. They call that sage. Have you ever heard that terminology? That's old sage. And you sort of respect your pastor. You respect my age. You respect my spirit. You respect my experience. And you may respect a little Bible understanding and knowledge that God's given to me. And so I could say something to you that would help you. Where somebody else is saying the same thing and make you mad. Most of my counseling is done in the pulpit. I preach counsel. I say things generally to the whole congregation. Nobody can pick it and say, he told me this. I didn't tell you that. I told everybody that, but I really was talking to you. And I knew who I was talking to, but I was generally putting it out. A good pastor doesn't have to do very much counseling because you're doing it in the pulpit all of the time. You understand that? And people got radar, pick it right up and say, yeah, I know, that's me. And a spirit-filled preacher with a spirit-filled message, and people that have got the Spirit of God in them will zoom right in and zone right in and pick up those vibrations and know who I'm talking to and why I'm talking to you. So, advisedly, I say, and tactfully, and learn how to be a little sharp, a little smart, that you could talk to people. We're talking about apples of gold and pitchers of silver. We're talking about being a rebuker, a wise reprover upon an obedient ear. We're talking about listening to good advice. And when somebody counsels you, listen. And when you are cautioned about something, beware. Don't just go in where angels would fear to tread. And when you're convicted about something, just stop doing it. Stop doing it. Instead of being a hardhead. God has no place for hardheads in his work. And if you want to be a worker, let God deal with you. Now, I'm taking too long. I'm sorry, brother and sister Gunning. I got 10 verses done last week, and I got 2 so far, and half my time's gone already. But different things mean a lot more, and it's counsel is what I'm trying. And notice in this 13th verse, we're talking about some more words. We're talking about refreshing words. As the cold of snow in the time of harvest, so is a faithful messenger to them that send him, for he refreshes the soul of his master. Good news is really refreshing. and that is a faithful messenger. And there are people who you really delight to be around because they are refreshing. They're a joy bringer. And of course, there are folks that are joy killers. They're really always on the dull side of everything. That's what Rush Limbaugh says Democrats are. He said they're always looking on the bad and put it in the paper, there's so many killed and all that. It's always got bad. But a Christian man, a Christian lady develops himself to be a joy bringer, a pessimist or an optimist. When you're a pessimist, you're on the dull side. You see the bad, you see the negative. But when you're an optimist, you always see the bright side of things and positive things. And try to bring joy. Could you turn your life around? Now, I don't know you people. There's a lot of family here. And in your families, there are different personalities. And some are, negative and some are positive people. An optimist, you can see a glass of water. Would you, if there was just half a glass, would it be half full or half empty? Well, the optimists would say, well, it's half full. The pessimists say it's half empty. And that's your kind of little test to how you think about things. Somebody said, boy, it sure is a beautiful day today. Yeah, but it's going to rain tomorrow. So that is the way our life is. And I'm just talking to my class to help you to be an optimist, not a pessimist, a positive person, not a negative person. We're trying to develop Christian workers, people that are magnanimous, big people, nice people, glorious people, people used of God, people that's got some brains up in their head. Instead of just yipping and yapping and talking and not saying anything or hurtful, just be kind and thoughtful and considerate of other people. It was said, could somebody tell me what it was said about Caleb? What did God say about Caleb? When those 12 spies were sent out and Joshua and Caleb come back with wonder, it's a wonderful place. It just flows with milk and honey. But those 12 other 10 said, oh my, I saw those men there, we were like grasshoppers in their sight. And the walls went all the way up to heaven. And it's impossible for us to go in there. And they discouraged the people. But something was said about Caleb. Could anybody know what was said? What was it?
He said he had another spirit.
He had another spirit. And let it be so about you, that you have another spirit, a positive spirit. By the Lord's help, we can go in there and conquer those people. They're fearful of us. They're afraid of us. And that was the truth, too. Their hearts were melted because of that 2 million people marching through the wilderness and coming up against Canaan. Why, goodness sakes, they felt as though there was no possibility. But they came back telling some other story than what they should have told. I hope you can understand. It's like somebody said, John is really doing a lot better. Yeah, but he could do a lot better than what he's doing. See, don't let your mind be in that channel. I don't know if you can change yourself or not, but I heard about 2 frogs that jumped into a can of cream. Years ago, the farmers used to put their milk in cans. When cans are about, they were maybe 2 foot, 3 foot, 2.5, maybe 30 inches high. Have you ever seen a milk can?
Yeah.
Has a lid that puts on it. When a can of cream, a couple of frogs jumped into there and got down in there. And after they got swimming for a while, of course they couldn't get out of there. There was, the size of that can was too slippery. And so, the one of them, the pessimist said, I can't swim. I can't swim anymore, I'm just giving up. He went to the bottom of the cream can. But the other optimist, he kept paddling and paddling and paddling and paddling until after a while, his paddling created a pad of butter. And he jumped up on the butter and stayed afloat till they opened up the can in the morning, and here was the frog sitting on a pad of butter inside the can. Now you can quit if you want to, you give up if you want to, but it's the optimists will keep on when others have already given up, because their outlook is so much better and so much brighter. My character building lesson here is change your negative attitudes and be more positive. Just keep working at it. You young people, you could change. Old folks, they get pretty set, but you could change.